Hi, so welcome to this session. We would be talking, we have young poets here from the Northeast. We have Sabreen and Kamal Kumar Kanti who've already joined us. We are waiting for Mona to come in. And we have Ashwini, who's got my name tag, who would be moderating the session. So a little bit about the session. Ever since independence, India's Northeast has been separated from the mainland and it's called as the other. But let's, take out some time and listen to the poetry from the region and hear perspectives on how we can make the Northeast literature more accessible. So for that, we have Kamal Kumar Kanti, who is an award-winning bilingual poet, writer, academician, critic, and translator based in Assam. We have Sabreen, who writes for various webzines and newspapers. She's published an anthology of poems entitled Soliloquies. We have Mona, who is a poet living in Aiswal. Her poetry has appeared in various journals and as well as in anthologies. And moderating this session, we have Ashwini Kumar, who is a poet, author, policy researcher, and professor at TISS. And he is also the co-founder of Indian Novels Collective. On to you, sir.
Oh, thank you, Mansi. You gave a very formal introduction. Isn't it, Kamal? I hope Kamal is listening to me. He is also academic, my colleague. So Mansi has given a very formal introduction. It's like, introducing Northeast as formal. Like I used to remember in Chicago, our great political scientist, Suzanne Rudolph, used to tell us that, look, oh, there is the so-called Northeast. That's the colonial political imaginary. Thank you, Mansi. We will continue with our conversation. I really want to welcome friends and colleagues, Mona, Sabrine, and Kamal. Uh, Three of them are outstanding scholars, writers, activists, from Northeast. And, the plan is very simple, my friends. The plan is we're going to share our works, and all of you have been doing outstanding works from different locations in Northeast. Before we do that, for the sake of clarity on how sun rises in the East, and East is a larger landscape, poetic landscape, literary landscape, political landscape, and beyond that, linguistic, cultural landscape. So I would, if it's okay, I guess, let's start with some conversation. So a couple of questions, a couple of, queries, a couple of ideas that I want to share with you, all of you. It's fine, Kamal, Mona, and Sabri.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I mean, I'm formally thanking you. And I'm really sorry I gave all of you a very short notice. So let's cheer up and smile a bit. Kamal looks a little, stressed out. So Kamal is a Zoom era. I start smiling. And I've been doing it for the last 10 months. Look at I'm aging old professor who has switched over to new ways of technology. I'm behaving more like a millennial. And so, that DNA is there. Let me begin with Kamal. That's fine, Kamal. I can't see Mona. I think I can't see
Sabrina is
Sabrine.
missing.
Sabrine is missing.
Sabrina is missing. I'm in her place.
Yeah. It's not like missing in Manipur. When I was in Manipur working, I mean, like, I'm going, Kamal to Tamelong, and everybody was telling me that, oh, by evening you must come back, otherwise you will be declared missing. Those were the times and dates. In fact, my friends, I started my career from Northeast Itanagar, like I always tell Mama that, look, where I am today, with no identity, fragmentation only. And this location has become my poetic lore. So Kamal, before Sabrin joins us,
Yeah.
you know the region very well. You are in Assam. Mona is an Aizawl, where I very briefly landed, and very briefly I could see the beauty of, but I learned from Mona one thing, the art of boat building, and I will come back to that poem of Mona, boat building poem. Uh, Kamal, how, the Northeast, if you look at, my colleague at Bard College, Newark, Sanjeev Barua has been doing extensive work.
Yeah.
And once again, students of the same professor, Rudolph and Rudolph. So Northeast is a very strange political imaginary. I'm sharing with all of you very candidly, so that, there is no, I don't enjoy the term Kamal and Mona, the mainstreaming term. Northeast is kind of a colonial political imaginary, but at the same time, one must not forget the fact that Northeast is largely a post-colonial coinage. I mean, like I'm talking about political imaginary, not the literary imaginary, which has a much larger, history. I call it primal history, primordial history. You
Yeah.
can't divest of Northeast its own primal history, which Mamang tells, look at the rocks, look at the rivers, look at the hills, of the Northeast. Everywhere there is a poetry, there is a literature. But when, and the reason that, Northeast is a post-colonial coinage reminds us that there is a certain age of, colonial empire or imperial systems. For instance, places like Far East and Middle East, if you look at, anthropological, sociological, historical literature, they have become really ingrained into our mind. So even in literature, despite the fact that you people have done outstanding work, every time when I go to any literary forum, even like my own Indian Novels Collective, people remind us about, they need to be mainstreamed. When Aruni Kashyap reacted rather, very strongly about missing Northeast, in the book list, I guess Kamal and
Yeah,
Mona,
yeah.
remember that whole
Recently,
idea,
recently.
yeah. And then and then Mamang said something very differently. We will come back to that. So what I'm asking you to, how do you conceptualize, as a writer, and especially Kamal, you have very interesting, I'm now, Kamal, I'm talking to you not as a poet or a writer, but more as a sociologist and historian, because you are the only one who is called Tea Tribe, and then Adivasi, if you remember your book, you got your Puruskar.
Yeah.
I would like to start with you, Kamal. That's something, what is it about, where these identities, and the cross rivers intersecting with each other. How do you look at yourself,
Am I audible
Yeah,
to
yeah,
you?
you're very much
Yeah,
audible.
yeah.
Audible.
So,
I welcome Sabrin, before
yeah.
you
Hi,
commence.
Sabri.
Sabrin, hello, hello.
So before answering your question, so firstly, I would like to mention or basically tell you that how I look at Northeast.
Yeah.
So although I'm based in Assam, and there are all people feel that there are close borders around the Northeast. So people feel that Northeast is a separate entity. But what I saw in the last couple of years as a Northeast is very much heterogeneity that is coming to my mind for the first time. So every river you cross by, every landscape you cross by, every border you cross by, you find a different tribe with very different cultures. And culturally, it's what I find that it's very rich, and you have so many things to do, so many cultures you are overburdened with. So and in that scenario already there is a long series of heterogeneity we have find out in all the landscape. Then when I landed up, when I am just say started speaking and started writing something, then I feel that okay, so even we are also inherited from the Northeast. Say now recent studies what we have found out, even for the language perspective also. Say for example, Assamese language is influenced by Mundari language also. So people talk about the migration, forced migration, and the things that during the colonial period. But what I feel that the term Adivasi I normally use, say clubbing all the tribes. Say now in Assam it's around 108 tribes, small tribes, small communities. So even for that also, what I find that is basically even we are also a part of this Northeast genre, but in a different way. Some are say there is a original history is also there, and at the same time we have a history of migration as well.
What is this happening? I'm hearing about, based on my own experience of living in Assam, the whole Mia Muslim, my new work is on beyond poetry is on migration and migrants. and we were looking at, the politics of, Mia Muslim, Mia Muslim, how there are forces who look at them, their literature very differently, their lingo, their aesthetics, their choices, Sabri. How do you look at it?
Actually, the whole term Mia literature or Mia Muslims, I mean, it is a contested term. I mean, some section of the Muslim population in Assam would adhere themselves as Mia Muslims, but there are a large section of the people, I mean, Assamese Muslims who would not like to be categorized as, as that particular term. I mean, the entire gamut of literature cannot be called, but there are, of course, a section of radical young scholars who are writing poetry, who are making certain documentaries, and they are asserting their cultural identity, and they are using this local slur called, Mia, and they are adhering their identity with that slur. That for them, that means it's like it's a boomerang. They are striking back with the same word that has been called upon them as immigrant or Mia. But for my personal, idea is that, I mean, as a student of literature, I mean, the aesthetics that they are using to look into their cultural domain or their religious, and so to say, I mean, their political discrimination that they are facing. I mean, as a student of literature, we have to study into all that. But the aesthetics of Mia poetry, I mean, is more political than in its humanist concerns, because I have personally read only a few of them, and I think Salim M. Hussain, who translates and who writes, is one fine poet. I mean, just calling him a Mia poet will be, I think, it will be just compartmentalizing his identity.
What is wrong with Mia poetry, Kamal and Mona?
It's not wrong. I mean, it's not wrong. It's good.
Can we have a
What's an argument I'll stay out of?
what Ranjit Vaskete calls subculture within the larger poetic culture?
Yes. Now, my take is that, I mean, it should be more inclusive. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, the aesthetics of Mia poetry should not be just judged looking at it as a reaction to the NRC, or looking at it as a reaction to the linguistic chauvinism of the Assamese middle class. I mean,
just,
yeah.
Gonna go back to Palestinian poets, write down my name there also as a Mia poet, Mona, welcome, Mona, and I hope you have enjoyed our conversation so far.
Yes, very much.
And how do you look at your own boat building, in Oizal, But
Yes.
I'm reminded of James Ferguson, who coined the term the politics of rightful shares. I'm talking to my colleagues from what Rodolphe said. That Northeast, remember in our days, But today, given the Mona, the range of great writers from Northeast, they don't need any special session to introduce their works, Mamang, Robin, and in fact, I was in Aizawl too, where Chandrakant Mura Singh, Kokborok, and there is, as Kamal rightly said, the plurality of languages, hybridity of languages, and there are so many things happening, even in Rajbansi language, So Mona, how do you look at, this pluralistic, diverse landscapes, in Northeast in terms of literature, if not in politics,
Well, it's a bit of a knotty question, because I write in English, and and instantly there's
and we are forced to write in a language, colonial language, which is our language.
So it's interesting, but I can speak only for Mizoram, because all the other states in the Northeast have their own little things going on, issues going on, which, as I said, I'm going to not approach that issue right now. It's not even my place, I think, to talk about that. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so so it's interesting, because yes, we have, as you know, in Mizoram, a single language. I mean, we have a lot of dialects and so on, other different languages, but back in when the British were here, we managed to unify by using one common language, which everyone knows as Mizo now. So if we do writing in Mizo, it's usually in that language. So what we have here is a kind of a conflict as usual between people who write and who write a lot in English and those who are now starting to write in in Mizo in our language. So which it's rather sad, but it shouldn't exist because I don't think it's not really very helpful in the long run. We're all talking about the same things. So that's, I mean, it's a very limited view, but I can't say that it's going to be much better for the time being. Ashwini, if that's what you were talking about.
Yeah, no, lovely, because see, Kamal is a bilingual. Kamal, am I right? Kamal is a
Yes,
bilingual. Yeah. Sabrine is also bilingual, some of us bilingual in the sense that, we have, I always say, but that the term Anglophone is also a political imaginary, I mean, like in Northeast, I guess, my friends would like to, join this conversation where English, or Anglophone literature is also an instrument or a means of resistance, It's not just that it's copying, I mean, like I'm using Homi Bhabha's, hybridity idea that, look, it is through which the Northeast has contested and resisted political national space in post-colonial era, and also the colonial space in imperial space. So that is where, the language, the bilinguality or multilinguality or trilinguality, that is that's seen everywhere in Northeast, Kamal. Am I right, Kamal? I mean, like,
yes,
all
Very
places.
common.
In Bodo, I'm told, Kamal, you can tell us more about, the Bodo language, Rajvanshi language, Robin also writes in Manipuri. I think last year we had a lovely Indian Novels Collective poetry reading where Robin sent me a poem in Manipuri. So Mona absolutely, you make a very persuasive case about, using Anglophone poetry or Anglophone as not just a language, but also as a means of resistance, isn't it?
But Ashwini, one thing that, the irony, of course, is that a lot of the pursuit of a sense of identity as distinct from other identities, even within the Northeast, a lot of the what shall we call it? A lot of the dialect comes from English, So, I mean, even the people who are now, it never used to be like this before, but now that there's, as Dhruv and I were saying once upon a time, that once we start getting a sense of our own unique, distinct identity, which is, it's different from the rest of the people around, and there's a bit of chauvinism that starts creeping in. But the irony, as usual, is that a lot of the language that is employed to carve out that identity is, it's actually, it started from English, from English works and so on. So, I mean, we know about that. We are aware of that, of the kind of interior conflicts that we might have about using English or using our own language and things like that. So it's not something that is at all new or novel to the Northeast or to Mizoram in particular. So I think rather than wasting time in disputing about these things, I mean, not between us, but between writers over here, I think it's much more helpful if we just do whatever we're doing in our own ways and come together once in a while. That's what I feel anyway.
You are muted.
So you're muted.
Yeah. Let me go back to Kamal, I mean, this is the Zoom challenge, Zoom has its own language, I guess, it keeps, muting, unmuting, and I'm learning that, I'm kind of, Kamal, learning of late, that technology had its own language. Can we hear that language? Maybe, I'm going to go back to Kamal and asking him to begin our poetry reading part of the conversation, I mean, like we have assembled here to share our works with each other and also with a larger audience. Kamal, would you like to, something what Mona said about, about English, within that, context, the landscape, multiple landscapes, I call it, there's not just one, what I'm trying to convey and, converse about, that Northeast is not a monolith, Now can't be a monolith, The sad impression when we were on Delhi University campus, the JNU campus, everybody thought that, oh, it's kind of, I don't want to rage, that debate. We will require another session for that, and we will do that sometime later. Kamal, would you like to, share a poem or something that you want to be with us,
So I will read out a very small
reflecting
poem.
on the multiplicity of cultures,
Yes.
I haven't had my tea, so I'm waiting for my tea, Kamal.
Yes.
Not in the sense of, tea time.
Yeah. So I would like to read out a poem that originally I wrote it in Assamese, then translated by Salim actually.
Yeah.
Salim is a brother to me, and I could not speak up for the Mia poetry. I think later we can discuss about it. So this poem is called Behind Closed Doors. So when I have written this poem, this is a very simple one. Then later I have explored that although as a Northeast we are as a term or we are as a contested identity, but still we do not know each other much. Say when I
Really,
went to Nagaland in my younger
Kamal. I
days.
mean, like,
Yeah.
really, Mona, Kamal, Sabrin, Kamal. I'm
No,
just
no,
kidding.
that is okay. We know
I'm not just pulling your
personally.
leg,
We know personally, but say
No, I
when
know, I read you. I mean, like, see, Kamal, you are very well cited. My friend
yeah.
Sanjeev Barua in his new book has cited you.
Yeah. Yes. So basically, what I have found out when I reached Nagaland for the first time, then I initially I thought Naga is a term, Naga is a tribe. Then I have found out that there are a lot of basically different tribes are there, different customs are there, different cultures are there. So what I feel that we have to open the doors. We have to open the doors for each other. So I think that's how I will start with this poem. Before the paint could fleck off the rainbow walls, the closed room's air and strands trapped me. I don't remember how I got here, an ancestor's house. This ancestor is supposed to have told my grandfather, like me, you too will fall under the spell of this house. This grandfather was something else. He said, I will tear down the house, auction off its plinth. The years turned, but the house stood. Now people say this is heritage, a vestige of society. And I am the past, chaser of the past long shadows, guardian of the past, and the annihilator of the past. Before the pain could fleck off the rainbow walls, the closed room's air and strands trap me. I am trapped between my past and this closed house.
Beautiful, Kamal. I mean, like this annihilator of the past, I'm moving from annihilator of the past called, Kamal to Sabarin. Sabarin, could you share a couple of, your poems? I've seen your essays,
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not going to go back to, what is called DNU. There is already debate going around about a particular, teleserial, Tandav. So
I would just like to say that I'm not yet bilingual. I mean, I read a lot of Assamese literature, but because of my education in English and consistently, I mean, I have been sticking to English, so I don't write much of Assamese, just a few scribbles. But so that's why I would like to read the poem Mother Tongue Blues, which was published recently in Samyukta Poetry. So this question of Mia poetry will also be included in this Mother Tongue Blues from my perspective. Mother Tongue Blues, a human, a woman, a netizen of India, a Khilonjia, an Ohomia, a Goria, a Mia, a Desi or Jolha, or a Bagania. I am all in flesh and blood one, yet why I creep when one asks, what is my mother tongue? I blast out at the computer operator at the NRC Hearing Center, who is rude to my septuagenarian father and uncle and repeats what is our mother tongue. He has never heard the term Ahomia Musalman. I was enraged, but he was just doing his job. Yet why I crib when one asks, what is my mother tongue? So this poem, I'm trying to see my identity in the current political scenario in Assam, because Muslims are being pulled here and there. I mean, some of them, they want to assert their migrant identity. Some want to assert their indigenous identity. Now, this whole idea of indigenous versus migrant and native and ethnic, I mean, who's the ethnic Assamese? And that is the debate that is going on. So, I mean, we are at a very complex situation. I mean, being in Northeast, it's difficult to get into the mainstream, and being in the minority, it is difficult to be in the mainstream Assamese as well. So that is the problem which I'm trying to cite in this poem.
Yeah, lovely. Because I can hear that polyphonic sounds here. I mean, like my colleagues would agree that when Sabrine is speaking about what's my mother tongue, but I can hear polyphony there. I can hear, a certain politics of indigeneity, questioning that politics,
Yes.
questioning the idea of dislocation, questioning the very idea of minority, how it is perceived by others, Mona, how would you like to look at your own skills of boat making or boat building? Where did you get, this boat building, skill, in the language or in the aesthetics, how did the local, aesthetics influenced your writings, and please read a couple of poems.
Yes, thank you. Yes, it's not really a local aesthetics or anything, and the imagery is very personal in the sense that I really love boats and the sea. And I was thinking that it's very, it's kind of, it's funny, it's humorous that somebody who likes being on the seashore so much is, constantly stuck in the hills. And the other thing is that we have a lot of construction going on, and there's always the sound of hammering. And of course, I suppose what I was saying was that, the fact that there's a lot of construction means there's a lot of, cash going around. And one wonders where, it's a kind of a political slant to it. One wonders where all of this is coming from. And the other thing is that, of course, we are at a kind of a crossroads, I feel, Mizoram, in the sense of being busy with so many other things happening that can't really be encompassed within one poem in particular in a way. So, it's a lot of things that are going on within the poem that I think I didn't convey very well. I feel very dissatisfied with the poem as such, but I can't redo it. It's whatever it is right now. So I'll read a few, not the entire thing. And I feel like I'm very bad at reading out, and they tend to go on and on my poems. So
please read first.
So I'll just, for you,
thank you.
I'll just read out a bit from the boat building thing. And the first few stanzas. Boat building, the question of being drowned or afloat, it does not really matter. These days you can hear it, how everyone is building boats, how we can walk down the cramped streets and hear above the everyday the sound of someone deploying a hammer steadily as she goes, a sound soaring clear above all else. I think he's building a boat. He needs to go away. He wants to make sure everyone is safe. Because the water's rising, because he needs to bring something back home, things he thinks we need. Maybe it's a shipment of warm sweatshirts. Maybe it's a good politician or two. Maybe it's all this gold everyone is so wild about. Maybe it's oranges from those other hills. And sometimes above the laughter of this man, you see a startled cloud of birds bursting out from their sloppy nests in a brief blind whirl of instinct, ringing the air around house that alarmed them, forgetting soon in their own way what they were afraid of just seconds ago because they are easily distracted. So I'll just stop there because it goes on forever, I feel. And, that's boat building. And it really is about building a sense of oneself, about what the city which is so much in flux right now as development comes in, as people, as one of the things is that we have always called ourselves a classless society, Mizos, and which is actually not very true, because always behind the facade of being equal, and so on, there's always a strata of a hierarchy of people who are more powerful, people who are more influential, who just have more wealth and things like that. And all of these new things which are coming in so suddenly, and I'm grappling with them, and I think a lot of people are also wrestling with these questions right now. So it's kind of there, but as I said, it's a flawed poem. I feel like I hadn't said enough, in fact.
Any other poem would like to share, a short poem before I move on to the
Okay.
second round of poetry reading?
Yes, I suppose there's one, a short one that I could read out. It's wait just 1 minute. I have it over
No,
here.
it's okay. It's okay, because there's something that you remember that people, when they think of Northeast, they think of insurgency. On the contrary, the Northeast literature that's coming up, people like Arunika Sepp and
Yes.
a lot of people now, even in like Sikkim, you can see the kind of novels coming from.
Oh,
It's
yes.
not always about insurgency. It's not always about when Iboshik said that I want to be killed by Indian bullet. There is a large sense of universal, sense of peace, happiness, lyric. Something, Mona, would you like to share with us?
As a question, or
Just a thought I shared, because generally Northeast is conceptualized in the mainland as a
Yes.
land of insurgency.
Yes, and a lot of
Yes.
whatever Bollywood
Very
movies
true.
were made on the Northeast back then were always focused on the insurgency thing, which was actually very confined to a few states. Of course, there was always little hot spots here and there, but one of the things that I think we keep forgetting is that, for example, Ibo Pishek, whom you quoted, uh, a lot of them come from an older generation of writers, and the insurgency was very much aflame back then, which is, I mean, it's not right now. And obviously, if you come to the Northeast, people are who have this concept of the Northeast region being full of militants and all of us hiding behind bushes or something like that, or running for our lives. They're quite pleasantly surprised, which is nice, which is of course very nice. We are not all shooting each other and killing each other over here. Absolutely not.
Maybe, by the time, Kamal, can you share something, Sabarin,
Yeah.
poem or two?
Yeah, sure. What I have a point to raise actually when we are
Please,
discussing.
please.
What now we should concentrate about the Northeast. I think it's cultures. So what we should my request to the people who is interested about Northeast, they should more they should give more concentration on different varied cultures and horizontal layers of the thoughts and all. So I feel all the states who are basically getting the blame for the insurgency on all, now they're coming up with new voices, new songs, new poetry, new novels, everything is coming up. So I think we should concentrate on the new lot of resources whatever is coming up. We should concentrate on more on that rather than talking about the old connotation like insurgency and other things. So but still there are some clashes and some contestations are there, but they are, we can take it as an internal scenario. And in that case, what I have found out recently, that all the other states including Assam also, the new generation is doing very well. They're coming up with very new songs and which are reaching to the places. Earlier it was very difficult to reach somewhere from the Northeast, but it is now easier, rather easier to reach to the places. So I that's why
Share a poem, a new voice
yeah,
share, a new
sure,
poem of yours.
yeah, sure. So I will read out a very small poem here. The poem is called Travelogue. We were lost in a deserted land of Salona Garden. One old Kachari man took pity on us and said, "Just walk straight ahead, my sons. The road is filled with dreams, not reality. It's all dawn when the dreams end." We understood finding thorns is as difficult as it is easy to find flowers. Flowers do not let us feel, they do it themselves. Thorns do not feel their pain, they make us suffer. We wanted to thank the old Kachari man, and after killing him, we left his body for the crows and the vultures. That's why the cuckoos admired us, and at the end, we reached a land of shores.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful comment. Sabarin, would you like to read something that you have written recently? Even a small flash fiction, something, maybe your experiences. Sabarin, can you hear me? Sabarin, I'm losing her.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, please.
yes. Actually, I have, I would like to read a, small poem, which is not yet published. It has been selected uh, by a collection by Stephen Bodhan. It goes home. Okay? It's about my childhood memories, and it also talks about the richness of our what to say, composite culture. The wind that wafts across the tilting titasopas, swiftly swaying over the thick grove of segun trees in the large open childhood fields of scintillating tangy parties with fresh olives and berries, of cycle races and lost games of kabaddi and hide and seek is home. From Bokul scented tangerine dusks to studious mosquito bitten candlelight desks, the hilarious laughing women on the village road at Budhuni Budhi's rice beer driven trance, or the frightened children running away at the Nepali owned men's piping song following the long trail of his homecoming cows before twilight. Time slipped under the sun, drawing remembrance of all fear and fun, like the haunted laburnum or the cotton silk simolu, behind the dry pond of the forest with the hollow horrors of bygone years. The grass is forever green on the one side, while arid on the other. It still resurrects shadowy dreams of not so distant past.
Beautiful, 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 Sabarin. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Mona, would you like to share some of your new works with us?
Yes, I was thinking that I would read out a shortish poem, and mm, it's a bit, it's a bit, it's something that somebody was saying. Why are you writing about one armchair and all that? So this is called Esther and the one armchair. You know, the chair with one arm. In a time of discomfort, a one armchair is half embrace, half prison, self-enclosed and loose as a poem, as free and hemmed in as a stream. To sit in the one armchair is to scan your own incompleteness, the way your life lists to one side, and also the hollow scoop of air where something else was meant to be. I'm sitting here on a one armchair, thinking none of us are where we want to be, or intended to be, or were meant to be, not even this poem, part snapping eel, part dish rag, part rope of pearls clattering off the page. Steel and stuffed rexine hold my back. I feel the ghosts of others sitting cupped up in me. Should I make conversation? I cough politely and repeat a joke. The queen lifts a hand to smoke, signal for hymns and figs, palm fronds, jubilee. I feel I cannot move or speak, All now is here in the one armchair. We dance like eagles, yet we are not free. I gather my people to myself. A question stoops low on the breeze and takes its worn out place with great assurance in the one armchair. And look, a poem is nothing more than a footstool to convenience. Face facts. I'm feeling sorry for them born elsewhere. I'm sitting in this one armchair, tempted to tilt sideways from this world. My thoughts keep running out of space. The space part gets cut off. Okay, that's it,
That's
Ashwani.
beautiful. That's beautiful. I guess all of you, I mean, like we are entering, the final round here. And what I'm trying to convey and sharing with all of you, my friends and colleagues here, writers and poets, then Benedict Anderson, when he met provocative, powerful, insightful observation about nation as imagined, But if you look at language, and languages, Benedict also pointed out that language is always inclusive. If you look at the words, and all kinds of words from Cockburrook to Naga to Assamese on the Mia words here. So we are celebrating today here inclusion and diversity too.
So I would like to read out three short poems basically. So that I have written in English in last couple of years. The first poem is called "The Day I Lost My Own Land." A first glimpse appears through my childhood magnifying glass as sitting over a hard stone near to our own land. I remember my parents weeping and consoling each other as the bulldozer had pierced our own land, own home. Those cruel people on the bulldozer had nothing their own. They were neither our well-wishers or nor our enemies. They came to finish their duty, and the same day we lost our own land and identity. I remember I stood up over the stone and started pelting stones on them, though I knew it's useless. I remember of picking up all the broken pieces of my magnifying glass on the same day we lost our own land. My parents were born farmers. My grandparents were born farmers. And, and I, the son of a poor farmer. And the same day, I remember watching my parents' helpless, pale faces, crippled of being lost all the farmers can have in a lifetime. Those cruel people had drawn a borderline between me and my land, my home. Those political people define a borderline between me and my weak apolitical parents. I remember people telling the final truth of our destiny. We lost our own land, our own home, our own self. The same day we lost our own land. The second poem is called Fear. Can I continue?
Yeah, please, 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 please,
Yeah,
please,
it's a
please,
short
please
poem.
come. Please, please.
This poem is called Fear. A black sheep shivering, neither snow nor cold waves of winter. Fear and glow of the hunting dagger. Fear and glow of the hunting dagger. In the blood stains of it, face of the man reflected. Fear comes with more fear. Exist until blood clotted. The third poem, it's called Pomegranate Tree. Barefoot mind ignites human flesh within. Pomegranate tree in green leaves. Red flowers blooming of it. Blood flows a thousand horses. Sparks inner sense. Falls onto desired body. Pomegranate falls off the tree. A thousand horses grounded. That's all.
Beautiful, Kamal, beautiful, reminding me of Tamilang oranges, Nagpur's pomegranate. So there is a universal language, universal language of togetherness and solidarity. Lovely, lovely. Sabarin, would you like to share something?
Yes, I would like to read out a poem that was published in the Freedom Raga. It says,
Beautiful, beautiful title, Freedom Raga. I think all of us need that raga at this point of time. I'm very
Yes.
happy that,
Yeah.
the festival will enjoy this freedom.
Yeah. The title of the poem goes, Freedom, a Historical Misnomer. The saga of freedom in closed quarters of human existence, from the Occident to the Orient, from wars of race, class, and sex to hymns of language and struggles of liberty amidst reign of terror, political freedom charred in territorial maps is a historical misnomer. No freedom, there is no freedom in the post-COVID era. Engulfed in the fearful chambers of the mind and heart, freedom loses its role in a polluted space of political bargains. So this is it, that we celebrated our freedom, 77th freedom Independence Day, but yet we are so much within chains at different levels. So that's what I wanted to
Thank you, Sabrin. Again, once again, this polyphony, I guess, is becoming dominant motif in Northeast, So,
yes.
yeah. Mona, I'm like, would you like to share more poems with us?
Well, yes.
Or thought, or thought on,
Do we have time for that, actually?
please?
Do we have time for that?
Yeah, we have still, still some time to go. I mean, like,
Okay.
maybe, what they call, the last round or something like, split second round, we can do that. We have what they call micro poem or
I don't know about micro poems, but we can have something that is not terribly micro. This one is, it's a very short, it's a brief poem, and it's more like a picture that is, it's called Old Men Sunning on a Bench. A lot of old people like to sun themselves on benches. So this is Old Men Sunning on a Bench. When this is over, finally over, we shall go annotate the scenes we used to know. Take a bit of blue from a November sky, pause and reflect, stirred inside out the lie that when it is over, we cannot revisit a certain slant of being, a curve of the spirit. Nothing saves us, everything contains us. The girl curling her hair, face and fingers a fuss of potion. Pallbearers, a hill climb, a crowded grief, a stream dried up, pebbles hard against the soles of feet, until at last, sure as a clock, we come upon old men sunning on a bench, listening to the sound of distant feet running. That's it. A brief poem.
Yeah. Kamal, that's now final round, I guess, we still have time. And, whenever we are reminded of Northeast time, I guess, we have heard that ethnopoetics, and there is a narrative of rapture, resistance, suffering, and renewal, I mean, like, these are some of the powerful insights that we get from Northeast. So let's conclude with a very micro short poem, or maybe, some, Robin always tells us, the great poet in Shillong, that Northeast poetry has this statemental culture, We might end with a manifesto or a statement like Sabrin did, freedom saga. Kamal?
Yeah.
Sabrin and Mona would conclude with you.
So I will read out a very, very short poem here. The poem is called Democracy. Grass grows on your body, yet your body is not made of soil. Grass grows on your body, yet your body is not made of soil. You always cry for your dead father, yet you know you are a bastard. You chat for hours with your beloved, yet you tell people your beloved is dead. That's all. That's a just 6-line poem.
Thank you, Kamal. Thank you, Kamal. Sabrin?
Yes. just can Mona ma'am read it?
Mona, please. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. I mean,
Just finding it out.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very true, and I think what Robin said was very true. And I wonder sometimes where comes these statements. There's manifestos that we start off with, but one of the things that I just wanted to add to I think what Dr. Kamal Kamar was talking about, and Sabrine, of course, because the fact that so much of these little micro identities, since we're using the word micro, really come from pressure from above, so to say, as the whole post-colonial baggage that we are left with. So I don't know. I think we are all exploring it right now, and especially the younger generation, as Dr. Kamal again pointed out, who are coming with interesting things, new things, and have many more ways of expressing themselves. And I think part of this panel was
Right.
talking about whether or not literature in the Northeast was getting conveyed to the rest of the world. And I don't think these people are having a lot of problems. And somebody asked me that question, Ashwini, if you don't mind my just continuing in this vein for a while, is that I think there is a kind of a lack of opportunity for what we call regional writers in the regional languages,
Yes.
rather than those who are, more Anglophonic and all that. So I pointed that out and I said that we don't have, so much problems or anything, of course, the usual kind of things going on. But more than that, we need, if we need our literature to be really read, we need translations and so on. And again, we don't have enough investment. I mean, in any way, whether it's the people to do it, whether it's the money that's going to get people doing it and all that. So that's something that I would really like to be focused on going forward as such. And I will read a very brief, again, and not very long poem, because it kind of wears out your throat as well. This one is it's an old well, yeah, it's kind of an old one, not very old. It was written sometime just after uh, just last year, and it's called Salt Over the Shoulder. And it's my one and only COVID era poem, I think, which actually is about, I don't like talking about the disease because frankly speaking, life went on as before for us over here, apart from the lockdowns and all. So I was just thinking that, oh my God, if we never go back to normal, I will, what if we never get to eat the things that, and I'm a real foodie, so, but it's more than that. It's just a kind of a prayer to go back to normalcy, whatever that might mean for any of us. So this is Salt Over the Shoulder. Lord, never let these go. July, the hot month, breathing through its wide green mouth, all around shaking its damp mane over us, showering the land with quickness of moss and many slick places, with the glue of the sun fastening the sky shut, stuffing everywhere with cloud cotton, with a lack of discipline in how all things burst through, stupid with momentum, never mind gravity, vines looping crazy, sweet suffocating tendrils, congregation of ants on calyx, burden of homely geraniums. Days flavored with fiddlehead greens, bearing tight curls of shrimp, light puffs of pork rinds breaking in mouths made hungry, turning into beak and bill as we savor life unbothered by death. Lord, give me strength to enumerate the ways and means by which we turn fishbone to soup, dried fish to wet dust, and then brief season of crab rains, or to snap crab legs and suck on their sweetness, or the limbless coil of river snails. Be river, be rain, be creatures scuffling into soil and water. A dream gleams in semaphore, I'm trite, careless, tumbling into leaves. And Lord, let's not forget, strangeness of this bounty, we are breathing well. Our lungs stuffed, our sides smudging the world. 8:56 evening, we draw to the table. I see us here, hands turning to hoof and feather. We bow, say grace, I mumble it out. Grace makes us see the writhing worm, slow maneuvering beetle, flick of dragonfly. What are words but the empty skins of things we were once, already gone, already there. Now the dishes are clean again, now we are free to be a yell of delight or a din of sorrows. be snout scale and bony shin, be salt spilt, or be salt tossed over the shoulder. Thank you.
Thank you, Mona. Beautiful, we will remember Flavor days. We have already run over the time. We would like to conclude with Sabrine.
Yeah, I'll be reading out a very short.
Just a very short
poem. Yeah, very short.
We should have a collection of very brief poems for the next time, I suppose.
This poem is.
Thank you for that.
We also have a question for Sabrine, if you could take that as after you read the poem.
Yeah.
For you, Sabrine.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a question. Could you tell us more about the multiplicities of Assamese identity and how that reflects in your poetry?
Yeah.
The multiplicity of Assamese identities.
Yeah.
Actually, I am a Assamese Muslim, and that is my basic identity. And more than that identity issue, I mean, I talk about the cultural milieu and situations in my poetry. And in the poem that I had read out home, I had talked about the cultural milieu of compositeness. For example, in a village where I grew up, I mean, I'm an Assamese Muslim, but I lived in a village, dominated by all people. I mean, there were people from the T tribes, there were people, Nepali speakers, and mostly all the speakers were from the mainstream Assamese Hindus or upper caste, and all castes were there. So that's what I tried to show, that we lived in complete harmony. And in our childhood, we never ever felt that we were the other or something, which the current political scenario had made us feel when we are questioned that what is our mother tongue. That's what I want to correlate.
Wonderful, wonderful, Sabrine. Please do read your short poem.
The last poem, this is entitled Touch of Death. The mutilated body of human justice is slit open with gendered hatred, in sucking the savage taste of murder. From Manorama, Nirbhaya to Manisha, all are agape as you and me scream at the burnt fragments, burnt fragmented remains of a dead civilization divided by class and torn apart by the sexist dictates of free online obscenity with caste orgies of a fiendish fetish, untainted by the rulers of the game of law or the fatal fear of a castrated hanging.
Beautiful, beautiful, Sabrine. Mansi, we have any questions? We can take a couple of questions, or we have already run over. So
Yeah,
please,
this is Lasya. We have a couple of questions. One is, how has the publishing industry traditionally been, and how is it changing in the Northeast for poets?
Yeah, that's a good question.
The other one also is somehow in a way interrelated, which is, in addition to the more accessible digital spaces for poetry, are there also physical spaces, city level spaces that you are beginning to find useful in reaching out to audience? So whichever panelist is comfortable taking that question.
Yeah. Mona, Kamal, Sabrine, anyone.
Okay, I'll just go first, Kamal, if it's okay. Digital spaces, yes, definitely. We don't have much of that. We were a group of us here, at least in relation to the writing here in Aizawl in Mizoram. We were trying to set this up, but unfortunately, as you know, the COVID pandemic happened, and everything has been just, we can't meet together. So it has to be digital spaces right now. As for publishing, as I said, I think right now, rather than, people have their own ways and means and whatever, but rather than that, if there's writing done in our language in Mizo, then of course, that's something that I definitely want to encourage and find, if possible, find a way to get them published, translated and published. So that's again, something in the future. And besides that, I really cannot say. We had many initiatives previously, but right now everything is kind of on pause.
Yes, Mona, there was a sub-component of the question, about digital spaces, opening up in Northeast. All over, those who are familiar with the Northeast, if you go to Sikkim, there is a Rachana bookshop, they do, festival also. Kamal, would you like to respond to this sub part of the question?
Yeah, basically the publishing scenario is like the same like earlier. somehow it has changed with the technology and the selling pattern of books. So from the publisher's point of view, they still complain that poetry do not sell. But other than that, there is one scenario that new publisher is coming up and they are publishing poetry. So in that scenario, actually, it's slightly changing after coming up the digital scenario. There's a digitally also people started publishing poetry. And apart from that, what I have found out that apart from digital spaces in Assam, specifically, I'm talking about Assam, basically Guwahati and the other small towns. So there are groups of people who are poets and listeners to those poets. So they organize small events in a occasion, or occasionally, or in some regular manner, all small groups. So that is there. Apart from the digital spaces, there is a physical space also. People come and read their poetry and get the feedback. Even in Shillong, when I was there in Shillong for last 4 years, so we used to do that with Robinda and other people, and there are a lot of interest from the young people. So for vernacular poetry, I mean to say Assamese poetry, still there is a scope of that physical space, as well as the publishing scenario is not pretty bad. It's still in the book fairs and the different other occasions, people buy books of poetry. So that's there.
Kamal, there is a request coming from the audience,
Yeah.
That there are languages and languages all over, and I'm publishing, So if you look at Cockburrock, Cook, Bodo, etc., people want to know what is the publishing scenario there. I guess, in Rajbansi, Bodo, Cockburrock.
I can tell about Bodo, because most of the Assamese publishers, they're based in Assam, some of them publish Bodo poetry as well, Bodo fiction as well, because there is after Bodo language is getting the recognition, so there is a market for the Bodo books as well. But for missing and the Koch Rajbansi, those are happening from the point of view of the basically people started publishing by their own, or say very small publisher, very small group, or very small organization, they publish those. So apart from Assamese and Bodo, the other scenario is a little bit gloomy. It comes out with the people's own effort, or say organizational effort or individual effort.
Sabrin and Mona, would you like to take this final question on, I guess, there is a session coming up, Juban, a lot of publishers are taking interest, it's Speaking Tiger, Juban, Aleph, they're reaching Northeast, And I think, Aruni Kashyap, responded to that question too. Would you like to conclude, with your remarks on this final thought?
I mean, for publishing in English, I mean,
I can see Santaji is already there, our great eminent writer, Santaji.
Publishing industry in Assam is, I mean, it's confined to Assamese literature, basically. For people who write in English, there is very less scope to publish from Assam. Even if there is scope for publication, there is not so much scope for distribution, so to say.
Yeah.
And so people who write in English, they have to seek out for ventures outside Assam for national, I mean, they have to look out for national publishers. And I think this digital space of these magazines, I mean, webzines are giving people a lot of scope to publish and a lot of visibility. I mean, there are people who have been writing for a long time, but because of this digital space given through these e-magazines, a lot of literature is now available online.
Thank you, Sabrin. The host is, muting me again and again, so it seems that we are running out of time. But finally, Santaji, around, a last question from my side, and then I will go, as Pablo Neruda said, singing outside, in the world. So what is the translation situation in Northeast? All of you, very quick thought.
May I?
Thank you. They have not muted me. So can you hear me? Translated.
Yes,
translation.
Yes, I hear you. Yes, we need more translations, more translators, in fact.
And what I
So
find that we need, other than English also, we need translation in the basically the inter-translation, say from Mizo to Assamese, Assamese
Yeah,
to
yeah.
Mizo,
Thank you. Cross
then
translation.
from say
Yes.
Ao to Assamese, then Assamese to Khasi. So that kind of translations are also required. So I'm stressing that point.
Thank you very much. And let me conclude this fascinating, session with Northeast and some of my friends here. And I would conclude with, a line from Amanda. I respect her hugely, respect her work, widely known around the world and celebrated. When she says that everything has life in Northeast, and that means, translation. There is a huge culture of translation. She says everything has life, a translational life, rocks, stone, trees, rivers, hills, and all life in Northeast is separate translation. Thank you very much for being with us. And I hope, audience has also enjoyed. Thank you very much. And thank you,
Sir.
Indian
Thank you,
Novels
sir.
Collective and Belong for putting us together.